All right, welcome everyone. It is February 11th, 2026. I almost said 2025, right? Time is flying, right? We're in 2026, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of an overview, right? And you might be thinking, I might have seen this a couple months ago. The reason why I kind of like redo topics is because now we are in a new batch, right? The batch of our seniors, we're kind of in the end processes of what we're doing with our seniors. Now we need to focus on our 11th graders, our 10th graders, our ninth graders, right? So I'm going to be doing a little bit of a financial aid overview. For those that are joining me for the first time, welcome, right? For those that are joining me over again, welcome, right? Now, last week we had a little bit of a snafu with our email. I know a lot of you guys were like, where's Coach David? He's always here every Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Sorry, right? I was here. I did my training, but only people that had the link were able to get in from the previous weeks. But the email didn't get sent out. Okay. But again, if you guys can help me out by putting your student's grade in the chat, it really helps me out. I already saw that a bunch of people put 11th grade. If you're in 11th grade, this is a great time to be here because again, we're going to go over the process. I'm going to show you a little bit about what the forms look like. Looks like we have a lot of 11th graders here. Okay. So this is actually a great time. And I'm actually going to be, again, I have a very special offer for those that are here. This is the perfect time to be signing up, right? And even if you're in younger grades, I see a lot of 10th graders, ninth graders. I even see 8th graders. If you're in 8th grade, you are setting yourself up for success if you are looking at financial aid things right now. The reason is because there's more time to prepare. There's more things that you can do before it hits the critical tax year. Now, I know I'm talking a lot before I even get into my presentation, but one of the things that you do need to make sure of is that you understand your student's critical tax year. Now, if your student is a junior right now, the critical tax year has already passed us. It is the 2025 tax year, the year that has already ended. The taxes that you're going to be filing in just a couple months now, okay? But we'll talk about kind of in future trainings, we'll talk about maybe some things that you can do. What are some things that you could be kind of preparing for future years? But if you are a sophomore, this is the perfect year to meet with me early because what you do in 2026, if you're thinking about moving, selling your house, getting rid of some company stock, these are all things that can affect your taxes. You might decide to do them. You might not decide to do them after what I tell you. Okay. But today we're going to be talking Financial Aid 101, an overview of the process. Now, just a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. So I always start off with a little bit of financial aid news. What's going on in the world of financial aid, right? I also am going to be talking about financial aid in a nutshell, right? I'm going to be talking about the different parts. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the different things, right? So that you guys can understand kind of what kind of questions they ask, what you need in order to fill these things out, right? Now, a little bit about me, okay? My name is Coach David. I am part of egelloC and a part of egelloC Financial Aid. Okay. On one side of our company, we help your students get into the colleges that they want to go to. On the other side, we help parents not have to worry about college expenses. So I am a former law school and college admissions reader, and I am a former lawyer turned college admissions financial aid expert. I'm ready to save your family money. Okay. Now, one of the things that I also kind of posted in our in the chat before we started is questions, right? One of the things I always love is answering questions. There's no question that can stump me. I've been doing this for 16 years now. So please ask away, right? Don't think that there is any bad questions either, because I'm sure there are 6 other people in our kind of audience today that have the exact same question, but they might be a little bit too shy to ask it. So there are different ways to ask me questions. You can put it in the Q&A. No one is ever going to see it. You can also send it in the chat. You can send it to everybody so everyone can see it, or you can also send it to just host and panelists. The only person that will ever see that is me. So again, you can stay anonymous. I'm not going to say your name or this or that. All you have to do is ask the question and we'll make sure to do that. Okay. Now, again, I see questions already coming in. If they are in line, I will answer them. If they are not, I will wait till the end. We will have a Q&A session. Okay. We'll go ahead and do that. Okay. Now, kind of before we kind of get into the training, I do have a quick thing. Now, I think, just a little while ago, I did talk about egelloC, and then there's also egelloC Financial Aid. There's 2 distinct parts. One is getting into the school. The other is making sure that we can pay for it. Okay. Now, on the egelloC side, about getting into the college, right? We also help with that. We've been very successful at that. We have students in at the Ivy Leagues every year, top 20, top 50, top 100 schools. Okay. So if you're interested in talking with us, all you have to do is text us 949-775-0865. All you have to do is text the word book. Our team will kind of figure out kind of what works for you, where you are in the process, and then book a call with one of our advisors who can explain kind of where, your student needs to work and also what our program can do to help your student. Okay. Now, let's move on to financial aid news. And I do see the question in the chat. It is kind of a little bit off topic. I will answer it at the end. Okay. Now, just to kind of give you guys an overview, because I do see a lot of new people here, and that's great, right? But as far as kind of our trainings, they go for about 30 minutes. I try to keep it short and sweet so that I don't bore you out of your minds, right? Now, if you guys do want a longer one, definitely send me an email and let me know. But usually I found that 30 minutes is kind of the sweet spot. Okay. But financial aid news, February 11th, right? One of the things that I've seen is that there has been kind of movement in how like financial aid, kind of like savings accounts, educational savings accounts, 529s, which is probably something that you guys have heard of before. Things are changing, right? Now, one of the new things that has changed with the Secure Act, and the Secure Act stands for something super long that doesn't really matter. But anyway, something changed with the financial requirements and things of 529s, right? Now, one of the things that has changed is that the 529 can now be used to repay student loans up to a certain amount. Okay. So now what they're saying is that if you take out a loan, right, in your student's name, the 529 can be used to repay 10K in loans in the beneficiary's name. That's great. Okay, wonderful, right? It can also be used to pay for up to 10K in loans in the beneficiary's siblings' names. So if you have multiple children, then you can pay, if someone has money left over, you can pay other students' loans off. Now, here's the thing that kind of gets me, right? Because they think that you're trying, like, they make it seem like they're trying to do something for you. But while this seems like a win on paper, right? If there was money in the 529 to pay off a loan, why didn't we just use the 529 to pay for that cost in the first place? Right? Your 529 is not like an investment account where it's growing 10, 15, 20, 25% a year, right? So it grows anywhere between 2 to 3% a year on average. Okay. So it's not like it's gonna grow 10K in like two or 3 years, right? Well, I mean, I guess it all depends on how much is in it, right? But the question is, well, why did we take a loan in the first place, right? Now, so it just seems like it's putting like a ribbon on a piece of beep, right? I can't say that word, right? But it seems like the government is trying to package something that is like not that great and just trying to put it in pretty packaging. Okay. But I did want to bring it up to you guys so that if you do have students that are older, have already graduated from school, they're not going to be going back to school, you have money stuck in a 529, right? Maybe you guys have some loans that they took out for this or that or whatever it is, right? You can pay it off, right? So again, you're not stuck with your 529 that you don't have any use for anymore. Okay. All right. And again, I try to keep you guys updated on the new things that are happening. There's a lot of stuff out there in the world about like ghost students that are like scamming the system for tens of millions of dollars. That's something that has been going on for years, right? Students act like, or like scammers, right? Act like they're applying to these colleges or registering at these colleges. They receive the money in fictitious bank accounts and then they never register or go to classes or things like that, right? So again, other things are happening too, but I'll try to bring you guys little tidbits of news kind of every single week. Okay. Now, financial aid 101. Now, I'm going to go fast. And the reason I'm going fast is, again, I don't want to bore you to death. And again, I just want to give you the highlights. Okay. So the first thing that I want to go over is what is financial aid, because many people misunderstand it. Okay. Now, financial aid is money given to students and families in order to make college more affordable. But you need to understand where this money is coming from. The money that is considered financial aid is given by institutions, and those are the state government, the federal government, and the college that you're going to. That is it. So financial aid does not include Coca-Cola, Pepsi, outside scholarships, Amazon, Facebook, right? These types of companies are not financial aid. Those are considered outside scholarships. Again, I've done trainings on outside scholarships. Do they help you? Do they hurt you? It depends on your situation, all right? But the financial aid that I am talking about is from the state government, the federal government, and the college that you're going to. Now, there are a lot of different names given to financial aid. There are grants, there's scholarships, there's work study, institutional aid, loans. These are all considered under the financial aid bubble, okay? But to me, right? And the way that you should think about financial aid, there are only two buckets. There's free money. I don't care if they call it a zebra. I don't care if they call it a horse. If it's free money that you never need to pay back, it is in the free money bucket. Okay. On the other side, there are loans. Now, loans, everyone understands. Everyone has had a home loan or a car loan or a personal loan before, right? You borrow money, you pay it back later. Okay. That is a loan. Okay. That is something that you need to pay back. There's only two types. It's either free, no strings attached, or it's a loan, right? Do not try to differentiate between the types of free money. Where's this coming from? Who's giving it to me? It doesn't matter. It's free, right? So don't worry about it. When you're going and buying a car, do you care where they're taking the money off? No, I don't care, right? I don't care if the car salesman is, taking $1,700 out of his own paycheck to pay, to give me a discount, right? All I care is that I'm getting a cheaper price, right? So just remember free money and loans, okay? Now, the first step of the process, which a lot of families have probably heard about, right, is the FAFSA. Okay. It is the free application for student aid. Okay. Now, I think they added the F in there just to make it sound a little bit better. It should technically be called the FAFSA, right? But again, it doesn't sound as good as FAFSA, right? But the FAFSA is the number one thing that you have to remember. Now, the open date for the class of 2025, right? And the reason why I go back to this is because the FAFSA has been let's put it this way. The FAFSA has been in chaos for the last 3 years. The open date for the class of 2025 was December 1st. It normally opens on October 1st. The open date for the class of 2026 was September 27th. So it was actually early. For the class of 2027, our current juniors, I don't know when it is going to be, right? But this is the website you need to remember. It's studentaid.gov. It is no other website. Okay. The reason I say this is that there are a lot of scams out there. They're going to ask for your personal information. They're going to ask for a credit card. But once you get to the credit card portion, you've already entered all your personal information. They already have it all, right? And they usually ask for your social security number. So now your social security number is floating out there. So remember, the website that you need for the FAFSA is studentaid.gov. It is not FAFSA.gov. It is not FAFSA.com. It is not FAFSA.co. It is studentaid.gov. Okay. Now, what do you need to fill this out? The reason I pull these things out and I tell you guys these things is because a lot of parents don't have these things ready, okay? The first thing that you need is the appropriate year tax return. The reason why I put this first on the list is this. A lot of families, right? And again, I'm not going to point any fingers, right? Because I know a lot of people are kind of getting squirrely right now because they feel like I'm pointing exactly at them. A lot of families file their taxes late. When I'm talking about this, it's a lot of people, and it's not your fault, right? Sometimes you're part of a partnership. They send you your kind of like tax documents in September, right? And so you have no choice but to file it late and file for an extension. This is the 1 year that you want to try to get your taxes done early because, well, two pieces. One, if you're working with us, you want to get your taxes to us early so we can figure out the right strategy to get you the most amount of money, right? The other reason is that if you actually extend it out, like let's say that you actually file on October 15th, right? Well, that takes time to process with the IRS. And then realistically, you're not really going to be able to file your financial aid stuff until probably the end of October. Now, why is that a problem? That's a problem for a lot of students that are applying early action, early decision, this and that, so on and so forth, especially if you have hard deadlines. Now, one of the things that I say for families that are doing financial aid on their own is that you should follow the deadlines that are posted. Now, if you're in our program, don't worry about those things. I take care of those things. I know when things can be delayed and when things cannot, right? But if you're doing things on your own, you should follow the posted deadlines, right? I've been doing this for 16 years. I know what can and cannot be done, right? But if at all possible, you should be trying to file your taxes sooner rather than later. You also need everyone's social security number. So you need your student social security number and you need obviously your own. Now, parents, you've been using your social security number for decades, right? You know it probably, right? Now there are some parents out there. It's like I've worked at the same company for 50 years, right? I've only used my social security once when I first started with the company. I don't really remember it. Please make sure to check your social security number. You'll be surprised at how many people actually don't know it. Like cannot, risk their life on it. The other thing is just because they're your kid doesn't mean that you memorize their social security number, right? And please, please, please do not just look at your tax return. I've had too many parents think they know their kid's social security number, file their taxes with a wrong social security number for their student, and then only realize after I have them check their social security card, right, that their kid's social security number is wrong. Okay. The other thing, you will need a distinct email that you regularly check. Okay. This must be unique to the student and one for the parent, right? You also need a phone number that can receive text messages. Now, I know in this day and age, not many people have a landline, right? But I did start doing this when landlines were more prevalent, right? So you need to use a phone number that can receive a text message and an email account that you have regular access to and that you know the password for so that you can get access to it. Okay. So two phone numbers, two emails that are distinct. Okay. Now, just looking over the form very quickly, I'm going to show you what it looks like from the student side. And the student side is very easy. Okay. Now, the student side, they're going to ask you about your state of legal residence. Now, this is very important. And why is this very important? This is very important because if you fill this out incorrectly, if you put your address incorrectly, if you answer this question incorrectly, you will not get in-state tuition at your state schools. Okay, so please, please, please keep that in mind, right? There's also this section here. It's going to ask you to allow them to pull your information from the IRS, right? Now, if your student is making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, right, there is something that we need to do in this section to make sure that we are protecting your student's assets, but usually that's not the case. Okay. They're also going to ask you about your student's career plans. Now, your student might be a freshman. They might be transfer student, right? But depending on that, you'll answer those questions. They'll also ask about any specific circumstances, right? If they're a veteran of the armed forces, if they were a ward of the state, orphaned, in foster care, all these different questions. They'll also ask about homelessness, right? So just because you guys got in a spat and your kid left the house for 2 days, that does not mean homelessness. Okay. But if you guys do have questions about those things, you can definitely let me know. Right. Now, this is a section that has changed, and I do want to bring up because again, California has different regulations, but this is a federal form, right? So in California, there are different genders that are recognized, right? There's male, female, and there's non-binary, there's prefer not to answer. There's other genders that are recognized in California. This is a federal form, right? And so it has changed. Non-binary and prefer not to answer are no longer options. It is just male and female, something that I wanted to bring up for families, right? They also ask about, race and ethnicity. Again, you don't need to answer any of these. These are optional questions, right? They ask about citizenship status, okay? Now, one of the biggest questions I get is basically, do you need to be a citizen in order to get financial aid? The answer is no, you do not need to be a citizen in order to get financial aid. But what do you need to have? You do need to have permanent resident status, okay? Now, does the status of the parents matter? No, the status of the parents does not matter. The status of the student matters. So if the student is a US citizen, but the parents are not, that is fine. If the student is a permanent resident, but the parents are not, that's fine. Right, if the student is neither, right, then again, depending on the situation, there might be other forms to fill out, like the California Dream Act application, right, or other forms that need to be filled out, right? They also ask about high school completion, right? What you finished, right? Did you go to a high school and get your diploma, or were there other certificates that you got, right? They'll also be asking about tax filing, okay? Now, one of the things that a lot of families do, right, and sometimes mistakenly do, is they have their student file their taxes, right? I'm not sure why, right? Now, the filing limit in like the federal filing limit, I believe, for this current year is $14,300 and some odd dollars, right? If your student did not make above that amount, they do not need to file taxes. And I actually suggest that they do not file taxes, okay? The reason why is because then we do not need to mark yes on here. Now, if they did file taxes, even if it was for $2,000, we have to mark yes here. Okay. So if your student did not make over $14,000, right? 14,000, whatever, 300, $400, right? You do not need to have them file taxes. Click no here and do not file taxes, right? They're also going to ask about how many students are in college, right? They're also going to ask you about the colleges you're going to apply to. Now, one of the things that I want to point out here is that they only allow you to apply to 20 colleges. Now, you might be thinking, Coach David, that's crazy. 20 colleges? When I was going to school, I applied to 3 UCs and 2 state schools, and that was it. Sorry, parents. That was a long time ago, right? Times have changed. When students are applying to colleges nowadays, they usually apply to the UCs across the board, maybe 3 or 4 kind of, CSUs as backups, and then anywhere between 8 and 10 private schools. So if we really think about the list that students have, that's 9 UCs, right? And then maybe 3 or 4 CSUs, so that's 13 there, 8 to 10 private schools. That already takes us above the 20 mark, right? So one thing that I do want to point out here is that if you do have over 20 schools on your list, you have to put in the first 20, and then you have to let it process through. And then you have to come back, take out a few, and add in the rest of your list. Okay. So it is a 2-step process when you do this. Okay. So just keep that in mind. All right. So that's the FAFSA in a nutshell. Okay. On the student side. Now, the next step is CSS profile. And again, I have here if required. Some schools require this, some schools do not, right? So, but there's no blanket statement that will kind of like let you know exactly what types of schools will or will not. Now, in general, a lot of private schools do require this, right? And again, in general, a lot of public schools do not, but there are always exceptions. Here is an exception straight off the bat. Georgia Tech is a public school that requires the CSS profile. University of Michigan is a public school that requires the CSS profile, right? LMU is a private school that does not require the CSS profile. University of San Diego is a private school that does not require the CSS profile. So that's why this is so confusing. Every single school has their own process, right? So again, that's why we're here, right? Now, again, why do we need the CSS profile? Many of the schools that require the CSS profile, right, which is a form that is created by the College Board. College Board might seem very familiar to you guys because College Board is the company that actually runs the AP exams and also the SAT. Okay, so if your student has taken any of those or taken a PSAT, you're familiar with it. You already have an account. Okay, but the CSS profile is for colleges to look internally to see if there's any money that can be given from an institutional college level, right? So that is why we need to do this form. Okay. Now, this form, you can kind of think about it as like the FAFSA on steroids. The FAFSA has about 50 questions to answer. The CSS profile, depending on the schools you're applying to, can have anywhere between 200 to 300 questions to answer, right? Now, again, just looking through the form very quickly, terms and conditions, right? They're going to ask for your name, they're going to ask for this, they're going to ask for your social security number, right? But this is all stuff that is manually inputted. It's not going to be pulled in from anywhere. So the one thing that I always tell families is you need to double check the spelling, right? You need to double check your social security number because when you're inputting your social security number, it actually doesn't show on the screen. It just shows X's. Okay. You also need to check your birthday because if any of these things is not matching, they cannot match it up to your financial aid file. Okay. And then there's another thing, right? And it is about kind of like families that have that are kind of separated, divorced, right, widowed, right? On the CSS profile, right? They ask you for your kind of biological mother. They also ask you for biological father. Okay. And so they're going to ask you those two things, right? Now, if usually, right, if it is a widowed situation, right, then because there's no income from the deceased spouse, then there's not really going to be an issue there. But with divorced or separated, if the other spouse is still living, then there's an income situation, but there is a lawsuit currently going on, right? It is ongoing. It's been going on for a couple years now. It's not really getting to a finality, right? But basically, the lawsuit alleges that the CSS profile was using the wrong numbers and should have only been using one parent's income for the calculation of financial aid, but instead had been using two incomes, right, of both parents in a separated family for the purposes of financial aid, right? Now, what will become of that? I'm not 100% sure, right? But once the kind of lawsuit settles, we'll kind of see what happens with the CSS profile. Okay. All right. Here, again, for the CSS profile, right, there's a place where you add in the colleges. Again, not all colleges use a CSS profile, though, but here there's no limit, right? They'll allow you to add as many as you want. The reason is because, well, you have to pay for this, right? So it's actually $25 to send the first one and $16 to send each additional CSS profile to the colleges that you're applying to. Okay. So again, you also have to factor in this cost to the college applications, right? So the amount that you're using can balloon quite significantly, right? Now, one of the pieces that I want to kind of like make sure that you guys understand is I understand, right? Let's say your kid's going to Stanford, you guys live in Palo Alto, right? For those of you guys that don't know California, it's literally right next to it, right? Now, when you're filling out this form, I don't care where you live. I don't care where your kid is actually going to live. You need to click that your student's going to live on campus, right? The reason is because on campus means that it's going to be the highest cost living option, right? Living at home, right? Living off campus is always cheaper than living on campus in the dorms with a meal plan. Okay. So that's why we always choose on campus when we're choosing housing options. Okay. Now, one of the other things that I always tell families about is kind of like your home, right? They ask if you own your home, right? What I always say is that you should use the lowest amount that is on a government piece of paper. Okay. I know that a lot of families, they're really proud of their home. Oh, I bought it 20 years ago. It's gone up so much, right? You brag to your friends that now your house is worth this much now. But why are you bragging to the colleges that now you have so much money? It doesn't make any sense. So the lowest number that you can find on any government tax assessor's value of your home, that's what you should be using. Okay. So that is the number that you should use. So if your tax assessor says that your house is worth $400,000, I don't care what Zillow says. I don't care what Redfin says. What I care about is what a government official has told me my house is worth. Okay. Now, the biggest pro tip I can give you on this form is that there are only really 5 questions that are required on this form. Everything else is not really required. Do not volunteer any information on any form unless it is required. Okay. So telling them how much interest you made, telling them about your retirement and how well you have prepared for your future doesn't help you in any way. Okay. So provide the required information. If they need more information from you, they will ask. Okay. The other things, right? The student, right? We want to make them as poor as possible, right? Expected earnings. I don't care if they're planning to have a summer job, right? I want them to show zero, right? I also want to show that you are the meanest parents as well. So expected contributions from parents, right? From relatives, right? Again, I'm sure they will help out, right? Again, graduation parties are a great way to, jumpstart your students' scholarship fund, right? But, right? On the form at least, I want it to look like you are the meanest parents in the world. I also want it to look like your relatives, auntie, uncles, grandma, grandpa are the meanest auntie, uncles, and grandparents in the world. Okay. So zeros across the board. Now, takeaways from these 2 forms, right? These forms at every angle are trying to screw you over, right? So do not let them do that. Answer the basics. If they want more information, they will reach out to you, right? So the CSS is more than what I just showed here. There are kind of like, depending on the schools you're applying to, depending on how you answer, there are additional things that they're going to ask you, right? But before you turn anything in, before you make a decision on kind of what your situation looks like, make sure you talk to me about it so that we can decide what makes sense for you, what doesn't make sense for you, are there opportunities for you or not, right? There is a lot more after this, right? There's a process called IDOC. There are verification forms, right? And the verification forms ask for everything. They might ask about your income, send in your W-2s, 1099s, 1040s, right? All these other tax forms. They might ask about, how many dependents you have. They might ask about termination documents if you're saying that you're unemployed now. They might ask about divorce decrees or separation documents. And again, each individual college might have additional, portals that you need to fill out. Princeton is one that started like their own financial aid portal that you need to fill out, which is basically the CSS, right? And then every single college that I've seen has additional forms afterwards that they need you to fill out as well. Okay. The one thing I ask is that you ask for help, right? We're here to support families, right? Reach out on Facebook, email, right? No longer Discord anymore. Our families have now moved into our website, right? So we created a website for our egelloC families, right? And also in the Q&A, right? You can reach out and we can talk there as well, right? But do not go into this blind. I have too many families that reach out to me after, right? Their first kid is off into college, and it's like, why didn't you reach out to me? We've known each other. You've seen me before, right? Why didn't you reach out to me for your first one? They're like, oh, well, we didn't think we would get anything. And I'm like, you just cost yourself 60, 70, 80 grand, right? And then they see the savings that I get for their second one. And like, oh, well, we should have met you earlier. And I was like, we knew each other earlier. You just didn't reach out, right? So do not touch anything, right? Especially if you're a junior right now. There's a lot of families out there that already feel defeated. It's like, oh my God, going to a UC, $45,000 a year, that's $180,000. I'm already cooked, right? But that is not the case, right? So make sure to reach out to us so that we can talk, right? There are too many rumors and myths out there, right? There's a lot, right? We make too much money, right? There's another one that I hear all the time, which is applying for financial aid will hurt my chances of getting into a college. Total baloney, right? There's another one that's like, oh, financial aid awards, right? Only for low income families. Most of the families that I work with are between the $100,000 and $300,000 range, right? That's where their income sits, right? Other things, right? If you get a scholarship, you can't get any other financial aid. Financial aids are final and non-negotiable. These are all rumors and myths that are wrong, right? There's more, right? International students cannot get financial aid. I just debunked that earlier, right? Financial aid awards are the same at every school. That's not the case, right? Whether you go to so if you're going to a private or a public, if you're going part-time, full-time, this and that, right? But even if you're going to a private, right? Even the private schools are going to vary depending on different factors, right? So those are all things that we have to take into account, right? Last and kind of, on like, and kind of like the last big thing, right? A lot of people think that, oh, my kid's 18, they're independent now. That's not the case, right? A lot of families think my kid's 18, they're an adult, they're independent. That is not the case for financial aid. There's only a couple ways that your student is considered independent for the purposes of financial aid. One, they're part of the armed forces. They're in the military, right? Second, they're married, right? Third, they have a kid. Fourth, they are over the age of 24, right? Fifth, they've already completed their bachelor's degree. Those are the only 5 ways that your student is considered independent of you in any scenario. So if your student doesn't fit into one of those categories, it is not possible. Okay. All right. Now I just wanted to show you some of the results that we had from this year from early action. Okay. So this family, I was able to get them $61,000 off at LMU. Okay. Their family makes just north of $300,000 a year. Okay. I got them 67% off. Okay. This family, I was able to get $85,000 a year off. This family just made just a little over $220,000 a year. So they're still paying a little bit, right? Right around $20,000 to go to USC. Okay. But a huge, huge chunk off, right? So definitely an option for them now, right? Instead of paying $104,000. Okay. But here's my special offer to you guys, right? And I see a lot of people here. Thanks for kind of reaching out. This might take a little time for me to kind of like do. So I'm going to kind of make sure that I reach out to everyone tonight. But this is what I'm going to do for those that are here live. Unfortunately, if you're not here live, I'm not going to be able to get your email tonight, so it's not going to necessarily work, right? But I want to make sure that everyone stays safe and anonymous. So make sure before you send this, right? You can send it in the Q&A. If you send it in the Q&A, no one else will be able to see it but me. But if you're going to send it in the chat, go ahead and make sure that you're on hosts and panelists when you're on the to section. Make sure to send it to hosts and panelists. But what I want you to do is, or here's the offer first, right? If you sign up for a consultation tonight, right, I'm going to give you 35% off our normal rate. Well, actually, it's 37.5% off, right? So this is a no dilly-dally situation, right? So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a consultation with you. I'm going to talk about your student. I'm going to talk about kind of the situation with your family, your financial situation, right? And then I'm going to tell you about our program, right? If you're interested, right? If the program sounds appealing to you, I'm gonna tell you what the original pricing looks like. I'm gonna tell you what the kind of like no dilly-dally situation pricing looks like, and then I'm gonna give you the opportunity to basically sign up that day, right? The offer is only gonna be good for that day, right? And if you sign up, then you're locked in, you're all set. Okay. If you decide not to, well, the pricing will revert to the old pricing, right? It'll still be available, but you're going to have to pay full price. Okay. But I will tell you exactly what I think I can save for you. And the good thing about our program is that we always have our money back guarantee. Our money back guarantee is that we're at least going to save you $5,000 a year. Now, you might be thinking, well, $5,000 a year is not really that much, right? But most of the families that come into our program are families that are going to save $0 a year, right? And so $5,000 a year is not pennies, right? It's pretty significant amount. It's $20,000 over the course of college, right? So if you are interested, right, go ahead and put your email, and I'm gonna actually open up a doc real quick because there's too many people sending me emails right now. Give me a second, give me a second. Oh my God, there's too many emails. Sorry. Uh, Let me open up a doc. And I'm gonna send you an email tonight. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Give me a second here. All right. So I'm going to send you an email later tonight. Um, and I'll try to get you guys set up for a consultation sometime tomorrow, hopefully. I have pretty open availability. I kept it open on purpose. Our normal hours of operation are 12 to 8. The consultation lasts about 20, 30 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to take everyone's email here. Let me just make sure to do that. But in the meantime, if you guys do have questions, please put them in the Q&A so that I can pull them. Okay. But again, this is going to be a same day offer, right? I'm going to give you my best one-time price, right? And if it works, wonderful. If it doesn't work, totally understand, right? But if you come back later, it's going to be at full price, right? And so, just make sure that you send me your email. I'll make sure to copy it out so that I can send you an email later tonight. Okay. All right. But I know that there was a bunch of questions. So also make sure to go ahead and send me your questions, and then we'll make sure to answer those. But let's go ahead and start answering. So the first question that I have, and let me take a drink of water. I was yelling a lot. So let's go through this. So we have a question that says, what if my child EDs and gets accepted and the school doesn't give us enough aid and we can't afford it? How binding is this contract? So, obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of your financial situation. I don't know the ins and outs of the offer that was given to you, right? Now, generally speaking, again, and some schools have been known to be more fair, and some schools have been known to be less fair, but this is a tough one. And again, you can text us later on. The phone number's here, right? And we can talk a little bit further in text as well. But usually what I've seen is that do they make it uh, how do I say this? They don't make it they don't make it unreasonable. Do they make it difficult? Like, do they sometimes make it difficult for your family to pay it? Yes. Is it ever impossible to pay it? I usually say no, right? So the question becomes, is it impossible for you to pay it, or is it just difficult for you to pay it, right? Because usually they take into account those things, right? Now, depending on your situation, it might be because a lot of your assets are locked up in real estate or in non-reachable assets, this and that, so on and so forth. But if they didn't give you enough money, maybe it's because they're seeing assets in different locations, right? And it might be something that you need to talk to them about. But as far as breaking your ED contract, realistically, those contracts are non-binding, realistically. But let me tell you this. I'm not sure which school it is, but you breaking out of an ED contract does have consequences on your school and future generations going from your school. So let me kind of explain it. And again, this is a little bit more on the college admission side, but you signed a contract, your student signed a contract, and your counselor signed a contract that you would go if you went, if you were accepted, right? And if you break out of your contract saying that you can't afford it, right? And again, if you truly can't afford it, then writing a letter to them saying, I truly can't afford it, but if I got this much more, I could afford it, right? Is a good way to see if you can increase your offer. But if you are like, if truly like the offer they gave and they don't give you any more and you truly cannot afford it, you can break it. But from the college side, what they can say is the counselor broke their promise, parents broke their promise, kid broke their promise. That high school, we are blacklisting them for the next couple of years. it can happen. I'm not saying that it will happen. I'm just saying that is a possible consequence. So just something for you to keep in mind. Okay. I have another question in here. If you want to have survivor benefits this end of senior year, which impacts your finances, how do you communicate that to the financial aid office? Okay, so if you have survivor benefits and you're not going to have them starting the end of senior year, so this becomes a little bit difficult, right? So because you can't actually prove that you don't have something until you have the tax return from the year that you're not going to have that thing. Now, you can write a special circumstance appeal and you can let them know that this is going to be stopping at a certain point so that your income for 2026 is going to be lessened by this amount, right? Now, will they take that into account? They possibly could, but the only way to actually prove that that is actually the case is by getting your 2026 tax returns done, which isn't going to happen for another, 10 months, right? But you can definitely write them a letter explaining the situation. Depending on the financial aid office, they might be nicer to you in your situation. They also might not be nice and be like, okay, well, yeah, we can take a look at that once you have the proof of it, right? So that's what I would suggest. You can definitely turn this in a special circumstance appeal. It also depends on how much that survivor benefit was and how much that decreases your overall income by, right? So if it is a like more than 25%, decrease of your income, I would suggest writing to them once that benefit stops. Okay. All right. We have another question. Is how much do your services cost? Unfortunately, I'm a little bashful about money, so I don't do it in a group setting, right? So I only do that in our consultations. So again, sign up for your consultation. The consultation is free. At least you'll get an idea of what your financial situation looks like. And then I can kind of talk about our services there. Plus, I don't talk about the pricing because the discount is also only for the people that sign up for a consultation. Okay. We have another question. It says, what is too much money to qualify for financial aid? That is a very complex question because it depends on where you're applying to school. It also depends on how your money is made. It also depends on like the category it's in. Is it in W-2? Is it in capital gains? Is it in this? Is it in that? But generally speaking, I tell families, if you're kind of above the $1 million mark, I can't help you, right? The only way that anyone can help you is if you retire and stop making money, right? But again, at that kind of seven-figure mark, unless we use some very, very creative tax strategies and you have a large sum of money that you kind of can play around with, there's not much that can be done on the financial aid front. Okay. We have another question here and it says, do you have a separate webinar on strategies to hide, or lack of a better term, some of your assets? Can you speak to a few here? There's always ways to kind of do things, right? The one thing I always say is that there are always strategies out there, and I'm sure you've kind of seen a lot of them before you got to my Facebook, my Facebook group or this or that, right? There's people that say, use real estate and use the depreciation. There's places that say use annuities and this and that. And for a lot of people, it works, right? And I'm not saying that it doesn't work, right? The problem with it is that not a lot of people are in the position to actually utilize those things. Let me just give you an example, right? So let's say that there's a family that makes $300,000 a year, right? A tax strategy that you can actually use is that if you have $300,000 laying around somewhere, you could throw $300,000 into a tax deferred annuity, right? For later for retirement. And then your income could effectively be brought down to zero for that year, right? But making $300,000 a year, having $300,000 to just throw into a tax deferred annuity with zero cash flow for the year, how many families are in that position? Very few, right? Now, if you're in that position, then of course we can use that strategy. But then the question becomes, can you persist in that strategy for the next 4 years? Right? So if your student is a class of 2027, a junior, that means that you would need to do it for the 25 year, 26 year, 27 year, and 28 year. So that means that you would need to have $1.2 million just sitting around. I don't know. I wish I had that problem, right? Unfortunately, I do not, right? So there are strategies out there. The question becomes, it's always a cash flow problem, right? Is it feasible with the cash flow needs that the family has, right? But those are definitely things that we can talk about in a consultation. All right, let's see. We have another question. It says, can you help my 2026 grad student? We already submitted everything. Thanks. So if we have a 2026 grad student, are there ways to help? Possibly, right? But it also depends on where we end up going to school. So should you sign up for a consultation? Yes, you definitely should, right? And then we can talk about it. What are the most likely candidates for where we're going to go to school, right? Things like that. So make sure to drop your email in the chat. I will send you an email afterwards so we can set up a time. Okay. We have other questions. And again, I will make sure to pull everyone's emails. I think I got like 20. I might not be able to meet everyone tomorrow, but again, based on people's schedules, I will find you a time in the next, I don't know. I'll find you guys a time. Don't worry about it. Okay. Um, okay, so I already answered this question about earning too much. Again, the $1 million mark. We asked this, answered this question as well. Okay. Looks like there's another question here. Do I have to share details about the 529 in the CSS? No, you don't have to share. So yes, in the CSS, there is a question, there is a section about the 529. There's also a question um, in the FAFSA. But one of the things that we've talked about multiple times on our kind of trainings is that um, for the 529, there's a very easy loophole, right? And the loophole is changing the account owner, right? The custodian of the account to the grandparents. That is a loophole that was created by the government. The government created a loophole for grandparent held 529s, right? So again, that is one way to get around it. We have another thing here. It says, what if my spouse is working now, but will be retired and collecting a retirement pension between now and when our student graduates and goes to college? When he graduates, we will have one income and my spouse will be collecting a pension. What do we put on the form? So technically speaking, your pension does count as income, right? So technically speaking, they're just going to ask about what your income is, what your household income is. And your pension will be counted as income that goes towards your AGI. So it will count towards that, right? But again, it might be a special type of pension, things like that, but generally speaking, it's going to be counted as income. Okay. All right. Okay, so I think I answered all those questions. Sorry I ran a little late. There was a lot of questions that I want to get through. But again, if you guys are interested in meeting with us, for those that left your email, don't worry. I'm going to be reaching out in the next 15, 20 minutes with an email. All you have to do is reach back out to me. I will find a time in the next, in the next 2 or 3 days to meet with you so that I can get you kind of rolling. I know that there was a lot of juniors here today. And then again, if we need to meet early next week, that's not a problem either. Okay. But again, for those that didn't leave me your email, please make sure to leave it, right? This is your last chance because only the people that I'm emailing tonight are going to have that discount. But again, if you have other questions, you guys can always email us. Oh, let me leave my email here just in case you guys have other questions. But you guys should also be getting an email from me later tonight. Um, but if you guys think of anything in the meantime, I also drop my email there. You could also text us, right? But I'll leave this up just in case you guys want to take down the phone number. But we're here every Wednesday, right? If you guys have any other things, definitely reach out. But we'll see you next week. Hopefully, I'll have some more spicy things to bring with you guys or bring to you guys. But everyone have a good night. My voice is now failing me, so I will be leaving, and I'll leave this up just for a quick second. Okay. All right. Everyone have a great night. Bye bye.